Rejection isn't a verdict. It's just a signal that you're trying to win approval from someone who doesn't control your future. The people who build real careers eventually stop auditioning and start creating their own stages. Welcome back. I'm Kat, here to have the conversations with you to help leave this industry better than we found it. All right, let's talk rejection. Because rejection is one of the most misunderstood experiences in a career. Most people interpret rejection as a verdict on their value. If someone doesn't pick you, if you don't win, if the opportunity goes elsewhere, the assumption is that it must mean you weren't good enough. But the longer you work in any industry, the more you start to realize something important. Rejection doesn't always have anything to do with your actual ability. It has a lot more to do with systems. And systems protect what they already understand. Anything new, anything unfamiliar, anything that doesn't fit the current structure can often get overlooked at first. And statistically speaking, rejection is actually the default setting of building anything. A career, a business, you name it, rejection becomes a norm. Just for perspective, 90% of startups fail. Half of businesses disappear within the first 5 years. Even venture capitalists reject over 97% of the ideas pitched to them, which means hearing the words no or being overlooked is actually the normal math of building something, whether that's, again, a career, your talent, any of it. Get used to the no, because the hair world is no different. Let's use hair competitions for an example. A major hair competition might receive hundreds, sometimes thousands of entries. And usually you have one winner, maybe 5 to 10 finalists, and that's it. Which means that well over 95% of submissions don't win anything, don't get recognized, get none of the accolades that they're hoping for. And the reality is, a lot of those photos are beautiful. The cuts are strong, the color is incredible, but there are simply more talented stylists out there winning the spots. So losing a competition doesn't mean the work wasn't good. It just means the math didn't work in your favor. Now, let's think about career longevity. Depending on the study that you look for, about half of licensed cosmetologists leave the industry within 5 years. Again, not because they're not talented, not because they didn't love it, but because this industry can be hard. Growth takes time. Building clientele takes time. Mastering this craft takes repetition and time. And if someone interprets every slow moment or rejection as failure, eventually they just decide to leave the industry that they feel rejected them. When in all reality, they left before the long game had any time to work. How about this one? Let's talk brand partnerships. Brands receive thousands of requests of collaborations, hashtags, tags for education team, platform artists, ambassadors, social media influencers, and even those positions are limited, which means most stylists will hear no far more times than they will ever hear yes. Again, not because they lack talent, but possibly because they're just not ready. There might be more capable stylists out there, or honestly, the politics of it just sucks. But here's the part that I want to talk about. I want to talk about hair failure. Because every stylist I know that has become great has had a trail of failed haircuts and color corrections behind them. The stories are for days. You try something new. Maybe the sectioning was off. Maybe the technique saturation was off. Maybe the weight line isn't where you thought it would be. Maybe it pulls warmer than expected. Or maybe the haircut just doesn't land right on that head. What do? You adjust. You refine. You learn something. If every stylist quit the first time a haircut didn't work the way they imagined, none of us would still be here. Failure is literally built into the craft. Repetition is what guides you towards mastery, what guides you towards the knowing, and what guides you towards those consistent results. There's a story from Evie Pumporas that really, I heard the other day and I absolutely loved it. So if you don't know who she is, she was part of the Presidential Protective Division for Barack Obama and was running a security event at the United States Air Force Academy. During a meeting with leadership, a senior commander came in and started shaking everyone's hands, like down the line, as they classically do. As she's telling this story, she talks about how, he shook the first person's hand next to her. He shook the second person's hand next to her. And then when he got to her, he skipped her, like entirely. And then he continued down the line, shaking everybody's hand but hers. Now imagine that moment. That is a huge nonverbal no. That is a huge nonverbal rejection. And everyone in the room saw it. And so, when she tells this story, she actually admits that she has this internal conversation with herself. Like, do I step forward? Do I introduce myself? Do I make sure he knows who I am? Do I correct this situation? And instead, she says that she made the choice to do nothing. Now, if you ever see this woman talk or obviously even know her position, you know this woman does not lack confidence. And she lets it be known that that's not why she made that choice. But she made that choice because she understood something so important. She knew that at that moment, her mission wasn't to earn that man's respect. Her mission was to protect the President of the United States and keep thousands of people safe. And she knew if she spent her energy and her time trying to prove herself to someone who wasn't part of that mission, she could actually be drifting away from the mission itself. And when I hear a lesson like that, I think about how it applies to rejection in our careers, and it applies a lot more than we realize. Because when you get overlooked by somebody, by company, the instinct is to chase them. We get this ego moment of wanting to prove our value, to make them see you, to understand how good you are. But hear me when I tell you that the real power move is realizing that they are not part of your mission and possibly not part of your purpose. Listen, I have had so much rejection in my career, and I've always been grateful after the fact. But I'll be completely honest with you. I have a little rule in my head that every time someone overlooks me or passes on an opportunity to work with me, to collab with me, to bring me onto their team, my rule of thumb is that my rate quietly goes up. And maybe that sounds petty, but it's really not meant to be. And it's not out of spite in any kind of way. But it's because every time that happens, I spend that energy building something bigger and improving it instead. And I know that by the time they finally do see the value, then the price of access to me has changed and has gone up. When you're in this industry and you're building or you're growing or you're wanting to go in a different direction, you have to remember that your goal isn't to convince every room that you belong there. The goal is to build something valuable enough that you end up in the right room that understands and lifts up your value. That's the difference between auditioning and ownership. In our industry, and honestly, in most creative industries, a lot of people are still waiting to be picked for that title, picked by brands, picked by competitions, picked by education platforms, picked by social media. But if you look at the people who actually build something meaningful, they stopped auditioning and instead they started building. They built into their purpose. They built their clientele. They build into their education. They build into systems that work for them. They build into their communities. And eventually, the opportunities start coming to them. And on the outside, we only see this part. We don't necessarily always see the rejection. We don't always see the process and the energy that then went into building everything else. And so know how to differentiate that when you see it. So I encourage you to fail forward and lean into the rejection and know to build off of it. The fear of rejection only has power when you believe someone else controls your future. Stop trying to convince somebody else that you're valuable and start believing that you're valuable and put your time where it matters. The moment you realize you can create your own opportunities, rejection just becomes information. It is not a final verdict. It's literally just feedback. So if you've been overlooked recently, congratulations. And I hope that you don't waste your energy trying to convince the brand, the person, the whatever who skipped you, and you stay focused on your mission and building instead. Because the people who really build careers and change things eventually stop auditioning and asking for permission or validation, and instead they create their own stages. Let's wrap this baby up, but I will see you next time when we have another conversation that's not about a blow dryer.